This is TWIS. This Week in Science, episode number 972, recorded on Wednesday, May 29th, 2024. How now, science cow? What color milk would that be? I don't want to know. Welcome, everyone. I'm Dr. Kiki, and tonight on TWIS, we will fill your head with thrusters, trusters, and counting crows. But first, thanks to our amazing Patreon sponsors for their generous support of TWIS. You can become a part of the Patreon community at patreon.com/thisweekinscience. Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer! No day is the same, neither are our brains, as they process the world with structures determined by those who produced us and our experiences in this wonderful world. Thank goodness for change. Without it, we'd have no idea of the vastness of existence within which we range in our limited senses, unaware of it all, as science helps dismantle the fences. Let's hear what changed. This Week in Science. Coming up next.
I've got the kind of mind that can't get enough. I want to learn everything. I want to fill it all up with new discoveries that happen every day of the week. There's only one place to go to find the knowledge I seek. I want to know what's happening. What's happening? What's happening this week in science? What's happening? What's happening? What's happening this week in science?
Good science to you, Kiki.
And a good science to you too, Blair, and everyone out there. Welcome to another episode of This Week in Science. We are back. Another Wednesday in which we can reflect on the week in science, right? What did we like? What did we learn? How did things change? Oh, there's always so much change. I have a bunch of stories, and so does Blair, and so I hope you all know that there is a great show ahead for all of us. On this week's show, we have tons of science news. I hope that's what you're here for. I have stories about cow cuddling, T-Rex intelligence, fancy spy headphones, maybe, and our psyche. What do you have for us in the animal corner and more, Blair?
I have indigenous people and alien species. It's like, animals and plants, not like extraterrestrials. And then in the animal corner, I have counting crows, as you mentioned, and also parthenogenesis making a return in the animal corner. Mm-hmm.
Ooh, we always like the parthenogenesis. That one is a fascinating subject.
Yes.
All right, everyone. As we dive into this program, I hope that you can find us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch every Wednesday evening, 8 p.m. Pacific time, broadcasting our podcast recording session live, where you can join in the conversation in the chat room. And every new episode is edited and then published as a podcast, which you can find on all sorts of podcast platforms. Just look for This Week in Science. We also have a website, twis.org. And now it's time for the science, but only if you share this show with a friend right now. You got to do it right now.
You got to pay the toll, huh?
That's right. We're starting.
We're going to sit here. We're going to wait.
I'm going to wait. Charge for access.
Okay, I think you've done it. Let's proceed.
Okay, let's proceeding to the science. Okay, I mentioned our psyche, and it has nothing to do with psychology, consciousness, anything related to the mind or any of that kind of stuff, except for the minds at NASA, engineers who came up with this wonderful psyche, and scientists who came up with the Psyche spacecraft and Psyche mission. Psyche launched a while back, super successful, but what is it doing? It's headed toward an asteroid in the asteroid belt called Psyche. So I was like, hey, Psyche, we're going to name you after the thing that you're going to go look at.
Psyche v. Psyche.
Psyche, yes. So it's got a whole bunch of instruments. And a couple months ago, it was pretty awesome. They tested their really amazing communications technology, deep space optical communications technology. You still have an issue with time because this isn't quantum based, but the download speed was at about 267 megabits per second to a downlink station here on our planet. And that's about broadband internet speed from 140 million miles away, which is awesome. Internet downloads. Dang. Yeah. Well, anyway, what is Psyche up to this last week? The big news from NASA is that they have turned on the thrusters for this spacecraft. And the thrusters are very exciting for everyone because they're not the normal gas or just the normal propellant that you would expect from a spacecraft, as we have the rockets that launch and all the things that we have come to know from spacecraft. This is an ion thruster. So as it accelerates, because there's really nothing that's going to slow it down, it has a fairly constant release of ions because they've come up with a way, and they've known about it for a while, but there's an effect that when you have ions, so like a positive or a negative and a negative, they want to push away from each other. And so you have the metal that is part of the spacecraft and the ions that are interacting, and it creates a force by just pushing ions out. The blue glow at the back end of this spacecraft is high energy ions. However, if you were to hold them in your hand, it would basically feel like the weight of an apple. But it's going to make this spacecraft, by the time it gets on its way to Psyche before it has to start the braking, it is going to be traveling at an incredible rate of speed. So it's going to get up to 200,000 kilometers per hour, 124,000 miles per hour.
And the intention is for this to slow down all the way to stopped, or they're slamming this thing into an asteroid, or what's the plan?
Well, it might slam into the asteroid at some point. That's kind of no, but I don't know if they've really said it out loud, but that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So we're using orbital mechanics to take this wonderful spacecraft, and it used the thrust from the engines that got it into orbit to get it past the orbit of Mars, and it's gone way out, but then it's going to come back around Mars again. Now it's like in its ion thruster phase, and it's speeding up, and then it's actually going to like slow down just a little bit when it gets to Mars, because it's like, if you're at Mars, why not take some pictures and be a little tourist? So Psyche is going to hang out at Mars as it goes past, and is then gravity assist slingshotted out into the asteroid belt. So because of the way that the orbits work, it's going to end up moving faster and more specifically in the trajectory of the Psyche asteroid, which is what scientists think a completely iron-based asteroid.
Faster than it's going now?
Oh, yeah. It's
already going so fast.
It's not going that fast yet, but it's going like 89,000 miles per hour or something like that right now, but it's going to go faster.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, yes. And when it gets to Psyche, it'll have to slow down for a while. And this is almost 3 astronomical units out from the sun. So an astronomical unit is the distance from the sun to Earth. And so this is 3 times that from the sun. And when it hits Psyche, it's going to orbit and orbit, and each of the orbits are going to get tighter and tighter and tighter, and because it's a decaying orbit, and pretty much in November of 3031 or so, it's probably just going to crash into this iron asteroid, which we don't even really know is an iron asteroid. We just kind of, scientists think it is, and that's why we'd like to go there.
So I'm going to observe you, and then I'm going to smack you.
I'm going to smack. Yes.
But I mean, it's such a small little thing. It's not gonna mess with the trajectory of the asteroid or anything, right?
No, and this is the point is that this asteroid is about 173 miles across. So, I mean, we could drive across it very easily in 3 hours. They think because of what they've recorded, from other sensors so far, that it might be completely iron and have been the core of a planetesimal that's left out there. But we don't know until we get there. And hopefully Psyche, with its really awesome deep space optical communication, will be sending a whole bunch of data back to us once it gets there. But it's not going to get there until 2029. So probably this story will continue. Next time we talk about Psyche, it'll probably have something to do with Mars and the slingshot. And that'll be in a couple of years. Well, yeah, 2 years-ish. So we'll return to this story later. Unless their marketing team comes up with other things they need to discuss before then. But this is out of
that
JPL.
blue burn doesn't function as anticipated. Then we might talk about it sooner.
Exactly. But it's really exciting. This is people have talked about using these ionic thrusters. We know there have been a couple of different ways of making this happen, but this is this is a big thrust burn. It's pretty exciting. And it's blue. That I don't know why that color excites me.
Well, I mean, yeah, you think about a rocket, you think about like red or orange or yellow, right?
Yeah, so. It's a neon blue color. So this the frequency of the ions as they're being thrust from the thrust from the thruster. Got great words tonight.
It looks like a Tron thing. I think maybe that's why you're excited. It looks even the shape color that you showed, it looks very Tron-esque to me. Very futuristic looking.
It is very futuristic. And the other aspect that I had not talked about, which is really exciting, is that it's not just the charged atoms that are getting expelled. These atoms are xenon, which is xenon you could put in a neon bulb. They use xenon very often for that kind of stuff. And there's xenon lasers and that kind of thing. But Psyche's propulsion system is also solar. So it's got a big solar array that is collecting light from the sun to allow it to continue into space. And it's going to keep doing that until somebody tells it to slow down.
Wow.
Do something else. Yeah.
A perpetual motion spaceship.
But seriously, solar, and then we're using this electrical propulsion. This is so sustainable, right? We need more of this kind of thinking for on the planet, not just off the planet.
That would be nice.
Yeah. Let's see. Do you want to? You had only one story for this first part, so I'm going to jump forward from this NASA story into the best thing to come for humanity, especially for celebrities and other people that really, really want to have their conversations heard by strangers across the room.
But Kiki, I don't want that.
I know. And I am sensationalizing. And this intro, I think I have biased you by framing it in this manner. But this is, I don't know. The University of Washington team have developed a system that uses artificial intelligence using a single board system within a pair of over-ear headphones. Like people who don't really want to get who don't really want to have ear damage when they're listening to their speakers and all that kind of stuff use. And so I'm bringing up a video that they've put together to explain, and they've made this available through their University of Washington YouTube channel. And the idea behind these headphones is that you could wear them, and when you look at somebody, you get a sense of their speech, and you can press a little button and it basically records their voice. This is, like the 6 seconds of someone's voice, AI can now use to turn anyone into a podcast host or a video host or whatever. But what this system does is it takes directional information, and with stereo microphone inputs, it records someone's voice. So you have to like look at the person that you want to hear, and it records their voice, even if it's in a crowded room. And then when it starts working, it isolates that person's voice from the rest of the noise in the environment. So if they're looking at this as, this could help people who are hard of hearing. And that is, I think, a very, will be a great way, because as people tend to lose their hearing as they get older, when you're in the cafe situation, it is harder and harder to get rid of the hum of the voices, that lower frequency sound, and to really pick out the voices of the people that you want to be hearing. But this technology, it also, once you start listening to that person, the person can even turn away from you. As long as the microphone is able to hear the voice, it will continue to isolate that voice from the background noise. Which,
is there a camera on it? How does it
there's
matter?
No camera.
So how is looking at the person the trigger then?
It is, I think it is the trigger because of the stereo aspect. So the way that our ears are positioned on our heads, our brain actually uses stereo information in a directional manner, and the headphones themselves are using artificial intelligence algorithms, a learning model, for that directionality.
So it's about geometry, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So
I can't look with my eyes. I have to turn my whole head so that I'm like I'm an owl with my fixed eyeball.
Yes.
So I have to turn my head to the person. And then it'll cue into it. Okay.
Yep.
That's creepy.
Which is,
there are causes like it's more reason for people to walk around wearing headphones, which is like in some ways a social nightmare already.
Oh yeah. Go ahead, everybody. Wear your headphones and get run over by a car.
But also, like, are you listening to me? Are you not listening to me? I don't know. Do I have your attention? Do I not have your attention? Like, that's the problem with the current latest generation of Apple earbuds, is that they have what's called transparent mode. So you can turn it on so that you can still hear somebody talking to you, but you might have like music on or whatever. But there's no way to know if you're talking to someone wearing those, if they're in transparent mode or not. So it's kind of a nightmare.
I agree.
And now if that's what this is going to be, a full on over ear headphone. I'm not going to talk to someone wearing over ear headphones.
Well, that's now. That's now. And this is a system that, it has these onboard embedded computers within the headphones. So everything is contained within the headphones themselves. But that system isn't that small. So that's why the headphones are so large. And eventually, perhaps the technology will be offloaded to your mobile device, and it will be your earbuds. It will be your hearing aids that are Bluetooth attached to that device. Perhaps the processing power can be, moved elsewhere. Perhaps the technology can be miniaturized. Right. There's so many.
But what you were kind of sensationalizing earlier is that you can be in a crowded room and having what you think is a private conversation, but somebody in these headphones could turn to look at you, cue into your voice, and hear your voice out of everyone else's in the room.
Yes. I think you would have to be at certain times, I think, close enough for the microphone to pick up the sound of that voice, but
right.
Someone's just walking by your cafe table, looks at you while you're talking.
I do not consent.
Yeah, like that's where I went off the rails, because I mean, if I don't know, if spies aren't already doing that, using this technology, I'm like, okay,
Oh, fair.
whatever.
You're
But
right. It's already getting used. What are we talking about?
yeah, it's already good. But
That's such a good point. I waffle between those two kind of indignation and like defeatist very quickly. Where just like that's unacceptable. Oh, it's already happening. It's been
fine.
happening. Oh well.
I think the thing that will be, I think, uh, an issue is, for the more, per, not, super spy stuff, but, stuff that is very invasive to the average person, but stalkers who don't just interact and try to follow celebrities, they sometimes try to find, people have fascinations with certain individuals. And I don't know. Oh yeah, zombie Tom Hanks is saying, so stare at the person on the phone talking to a banker from afar and try to get their mother's maiden name and social security number. Yeah, so
Shucks.
ah,
Oh
yes.
no.
Yeah, this is like the opposite of it's noise canceling, but specific. Yeah. Dun, dun, dun.
Oh boy.
We should have a new segment. Blair's 3 seconds of indignation.
Yeah. That's
What is it
unacceptable.
today?
Oh. Not
Ah,
even 3 seconds. It's like
no.
1.5. How dare they even? Oh, I guess you're
Yeah. Oh my goodness. All right. Tell me a story, please.
Oh,
Yeah.
you know how indigenous people across the world knew how to live on the land before colonists showed up and
And
decided
told
they
them
knew
how to
what was
do it.
best?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, that's
Yeah.
pretty much the study. This is an international research team led by Justus Liebig University Gießen, JLU, and Senckenberg Leibniz Institution for Biodiversity and Earth System Research in
Hmm.
Germany. So this is not in Germany. The researchers are from Germany, but they looked at indigenous areas, the areas of land that are still run by indigenous people. Those are representative ethnic groups in the Americas, the Aboriginal people in Australia, and the Sami in Scandinavia. So worldwide, 28% of land is inhabited by indigenous people, which is honestly more than I thought. But a lot of these areas are remote, and most of them are also in some sort of importance for conservation of biodiversity. And so a lot of them are, for example, in the Amazon basin and considered biodiversity hotspots. And in areas managed by indigenous populations, surprise, surprise, the loss of biodiversity is significantly lower, and the areas are used more sustainably. The results were extremely clear, and they found a third fewer alien species than in comparable areas. So the biodiversity was richer,
Huh.
the landscape was healthier, and there were less alien species. And so the results show, no surprise, that sustainable land use makes a contribution to preventing the spread of alien species. And so this is a good reminder, of course, that indigenous peoples usually know how to use their lands traditionally and sustainably. And so we showed up and planted corn everywhere. That's maybe not the best way to protect the biodiversity of a region. And so often that kind of expertise is overlooked. The classic example I always think about is how Europeans showed up in the United States, in the Americas, and said, no fires. Fires are bad. The
Now we have
landscape,
lots.
terrible, and lots of uncontrolled fire, partially because there were controlled, seasonal, cyclical fires across the Americas that were part of the rule of succession and controlling certain species. Certain species can only reproduce when exposed to fire. And so we actually walked in here and thought we knew what was best for the space. And then it turned out, oh no, the indigenous people were helping to control fires and allow them to do their job functionally in an ecosystem. And they're like, no, don't stop the fire. Don't prevent the fire. So anyway, that was kind of a tangent, but ultimately an example of how indigenous people know how to steward a space much better than when we showed up and decided to like monoculture everything. So it's no surprise to hear that biodiversity is better, but I also think there are some potential variables here that could influence this. I'd want to see a lot more study of like, how do spaces look where indigenous people have taken over after when it's been given back, right? Does the land rebound, or is this only because these areas have remained wild and have not been turned into some sort of farmed or cultivated space? And also, are they more remote, and so introduced species just haven't gotten there because it is more remote and colonists didn't show up and have, you know, eucalyptus seeds fall off their sheep or whatever. So yeah, how much of it is each factor, right? And how much of it is just the fact that the only places that indigenous people live now, by and large, are extremely remote, more untouched by colonist hand areas, right? So I'd be willing to wager that if you gave land back to indigenous people that it's going to rebound, but I don't know how much and how comparable it would be to these other spaces, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that these questions that you bring up are really important in the context of climate change and the movement of species that's happening right now. Plants, animals, humans. I mean, there's just, and we're learning, but we're not doing it right. But I mean, does that mean that as things change, that people who used to know how to do it right and had this way of doing it do they still know how to, like, I don't know.
Right. Yep.
How do
and when you throw in introduced species, it gets more complicated. So like there's this huge movement, 30 by 30, trying to get 30% of the land in the world preserved by 2030, which is not going to happen. But oh man, I'm so glad that we're trying. But when you preserve an amount of land and you say this is not going to get touched, right? Or you protect it, and there are introduced species on that land already. Yeah. What do you do? Do you not touch it because you've preserved that land? Do you try to remove the invasive species? I think it's a case by case basis, right? And it's also a question of resources and all sorts of other things. How easy is it? How hard is it to remove them? How long have they been there? Yeah. Have they replaced another plant or animal functionally in that space that you removing them is actually going to cause problem? Yes. Oh my gosh, it's complicated.
Yeah. So my English ivy on my hillside that I am waging war with constantly, it is invasive and it has taken over, and there are other species that would actually do better than it does if I could get the ivy out and put the other species in. The English ivy isn't as good as at getting a low or a deep root system in, so it's not great for erosion. And actually, if a lot of water comes down, that the ivy rootlets are just in the surface, and the whole hill can come sliding down thanks to the water and the ivy. Yeah. So I'm hopeful. I'm looking forward to planting some Oregon grape. I'm going to get a whole bunch of some native species in here. But this is a little microcosm of the questions that you're asking, right? And as I'm doing it, because it's nice weather in the spring, I'm like, whose nest am I destroying? Whose little, whose home is underneath this that I am messing up? So I understand the disruption that I'm causing, but things must change. But I'm trying to do it in an educated way.
Yeah. Yeah. And Shubru in
using
the chat
goats.
mentioned that Shubru lives just north of Napa. There's nothing but grapevines up there. I don't think the Indians made a lot of wine. The native peoples in California, I don't think they made much wine, but they did eat a lot of grapes, and there are native grapes in California. Mostly what you're seeing is not native grapes, but
No, the ones in the
there are
wineries.
some. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, most of those came from France, I would assume, but
Or
anyway.
Spain or there's all
Yeah.
sorts of them.
Italy. Yeah.
But yeah, you were talking about
Turkey.
fires, and I think it's a very interesting topic that you mentioned, the fires that are increasing as the earth heats up, the forests heat up, and we haven't managed them in a way that would get rid of a lot of the material that would like to burn. And so there's a new study out of the University of California, Riverside, that, you think you're doing good. We're putting these new technologies on the smokestacks, on the manufacturing plants that we're creating to cleanse, to scrub the sulfates out of the air, so that we're putting fewer small particulate aerosolized bits of pollution into our atmosphere. But you think that's really good. And you're like, yay, we're making pollution less. But as you make pollution less, that means there's less stuff in the air to reflect the sunlight. And so forests heat up more. And in addition to heating up more, there's a bounty of carbon dioxide. So the plants are like, I'm going to open my little pores for respiration, like photosynthesis and everything, whenever I feel like it, not all the time, because I don't, this is abundant carbon dioxide. So they're not evapotranspiring as much as they normally would. So
They're drunk. The trees are drunk.
Well, they're not
carbon dioxide.
They're drunk on carbon dioxide, but they're not drunk on water.
Right.
Because what happens when they open up their little pores is the water from the roots that they're drinking up, sucking from the ground. It's that capillary action that takes it all the way out. And then you have that evapotranspiration out into the atmosphere. But they don't need to do that all the time. So the trees are drier and they're getting hotter. And we're not doing anything or enough to really make sure that everything's cleaned up and nice. So the good news is that there is a solution. We have to reduce our carbon dioxide emissions at the same time as reducing our pollution.
Say word? To reduce carbon dioxide?
No, can't just do. I mean, we could just do carbon dioxide, but then we're all going to have allergies and lung disease and all sorts of other things that are happening because of cardiovascular disease, because of pollution. Those particulates. Good gracious.
We gotta just stop messing up the planet. We gotta also stop with all the plastics. We just gotta stop all of it. Can we just stop all of it?
Can we? Yeah, no more plastics in the embryos, everyone, please.
Oh boy.
Let's just not do that. Yeah. So if we were to reduce our pollution, it's not just a solution on its own. It'll just reduce the pollution, but it'll probably make the forests hot, 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 and they'll pop, pop, pop into inflagrations that will create more pollution in the air. It's going to be awesome. It's so good. Oh my goodness.
Yikes.
Well, these stories were fun. So I think it's time for me to tell you, everyone out there, that this is This Week in Science. And Blair and I are having a wonderful time trying to be optimistic about the future of the world right now. I hope that you are joining us on this journey of joy and exploration. If you're enjoying it, then please share it with a friend. Also, you can head over to twis.org and click on the Patreon link if you'd like to become a patron. And if you do become a patron at the level of your choosing, $10 and more a month, I will thank you by name at the end of the show, usually stumbling over names a little bit, but I do what I can. I try. And but you will be supporting the show and help keep it going. We also have our merchandise where you can get TWIS shirts and hats and sweatshirts and Blair pillows, because Blair's done a whole bunch of art through the years and made us so many things that you can enjoy. And there's a little bit that comes back from each sale that does support us. So I know, but if you aren't in the way of being able to buy or financially support, helping spread the word about TWIS is really just a wonderful way to help build this community. Let's try and create a community of interested science enthusiasts who are curious and don't just want answers. You want to go down the rabbit hole. I can't do this without you. None of us can do it without you. TWIS can't do it without you. Thank you for your support. All right. I do believe it is now the time in this show that we love to call, and I'm so glad it's back for just, I don't know how long, but I'm so glad. It's time for Blair's Animal Corner with Blair.
She loves our creatures, great and small. Biped, millipede, no pet at all. If you want to hear about animals, she's your girl. Except for giant pandas and squirrels. There's Animal Corner.
What you got, Blair?
I have some Counting Crows. Are they the ones that sing,
Did we leave that?
Mr. Jones and me? Isn't that them?
Yeah, we left them in the 90s, right?
Well, these Counting Crows, they're carrion crows. They count the caws that they caw for treats. This is a study from University of Tübingen. Lots of Scandinavian stuff in my feed this week. They wanted to look at these carrion crows. They're a group of songbirds. They're known for just being super smart. And so in earlier studies, they have shown that these guys can understand general counting. But in this one in particular, they wanted to look at vocal control and whether they could count and control how many calls they did at a time. And so what they did is they conditioned them to see a certain Arabic numeral. And if they saw that, or if they heard a specific sound, they had to produce a specific number of calls, 1 to 4 calls, depending. And when they were done, to signify they were done, they had to hit an enter key with their beak. They had to peck on an enter key. So they had to caw, 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 enter. They're like, yes, you get a treat. You did the right number of caws. All of the birds, they had 3 of them. They all did it. They were successful. They were able to count their calls in sequence.
Yay, birds!
Yes. Where this gets interesting is in a couple ways. So one, the response time between showing the stimulus or hearing the stimulus and emitting their first call answer was longer the more calls that were required. So if they only had to call once, right away. Caw 2 times, thought about it, cawed twice. 3 times, thought longer, cawed 3 times. So it got longer the more times they had to caw. And this was unaffected by the nature of the stimulus, whether it was a visual stimulus or an auditory stimulus. So that means basically that they were thinking. We're like, all right, okay, I got it. I'm going. So that means that they kind of had to think about the abstract concept before they vocalized. This is the other thing. They messed up sometimes. They had counting errors. They had one too many calls or one too few. They would lose track.
And tell me again how many birds they were dealing with. 1,
it was only 3.
2, 5.
3.
4, 3.
3.
3 birds. It's a very large, that's a huge sample
More
size.
studies needed. This is preliminary. But the fact that they messed up sometimes, to me, means they actually were thinking about it. Let me explain. So if it's like
interesting
Pavlovian
interpretation,
thing, if it's conditioning, right? Yeah. If it's conditioning, you're not going to mess up very much because you're responding as your 3 caws are a unit, basically, right? Yeah. So it's like, I see this thing, ka ka ka. It's like it's a reaction, right?
Mhm.
But the fact that you mess up sometimes means you're thinking about it.
Yeah.
Here's the stimulus. Caw. Did I already do caw? Caw? Oh man,
Or
I
am
messed
I
up,
am I
right?
really am I really sure what that stimulus was? And am I having
Yes,
to, like, take a second look at it and go, "Oh, yeah, that's what I," and what do I want? What's the value and
right.
what do I want? Which is also important with intelligent birds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why I mean I don't know what's going on in the crow's brain. These researchers don't know what's going on.
Nobody
There was
knows.
no there was no imaging of their brain involved in this. There was no like there's a lot more study to be done. But based on this, the conclusions that they drew make sense to me because of that, because of the fact that they did occasionally mess up. That means there's some sort of cognitive process going on. It's not just an impulse response to a stimulus, right?
Yeah.
The other thing that's really interesting is that after doing it a pretty long time, hearing the 1, 2, 3, or 4 cause, they were able to process the acoustic properties of the first call in a numerical sequence and
Mm.
predict how many they were going to do. So the like inflection of that first caw was different if they're going to do 1, 2, 3, or 4. So it's like caw, I'm done. Caw.
That
Like,
is fascinating. That in
yeah,
itself is really interesting, which
yeah,
means it
just on
the
the very first
tonality or
call.
the tonality or
Uh-huh.
the inflection is important in which makes sense because there's no enunciation in an animal with no lips.
I mean, you say that, but listen to a parrot make some sounds
Oh,
and copy
yeah, it's all
voice,
happening,
right? And
yeah, but that's
they
all
don't have any lips.
yeah. I'd love to hear, like, the tawny frog mouth
Yeah. Oh my
enunciate, but
goodness. Yeah.
but I
Yeah,
think
so
I think
anyway,
this is great. This is so fascinating because we fed the birds, the crows during COVID. We fed the crows. We got to know the neighbor crows. We, pay attention to who they are and got to know the neighbor family and then the murder that comes through. Not always the murder, but there's the family. There's a whole bunch of like social dynamics. And then we've realized that when you put food out in particular ways, there are a certain number of caws that the birds do to call their friends in
oh,
or
they
their
go, oh,
family
it's
in.
Cheez It Day. Come on over.
So sometimes it's just like 2 caws, sometimes it's 4 caws. Yeah. And then
Well,
yeah.
we know that crows somehow communicate pretty complex things to each other because
Yes.
the one that I always come back to is the study with the masks, right? That there is a
Mhm.
group of crows that were treated poorly by a person in a particular mask and they were somehow able to communicate to crows that weren't there to not trust that mask. How can you do that? There has to be some sort of language or something
Mhm.
that's going on. So
They
it's
turn their heads and they look and they caw twice.
right. That's right.
Yeah, but the question, what are the number of caws in a caw, 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 caw? And like you said, to our ears, it just sounds like caw, 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 caw.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
there is inflection that we're not noticing. That if we paid attention, we'd probably figure out a lot more. But
I
thank
mean,
goodness
our
there's no
language
Sherlock
probably sounds like
Holmes.
babble. Yeah.
I want a Sherlock Holmes crow. Well, I induced by the shape of his shoes and the mask that indeed this person who is here with the same shoes is actually the perpetrator with the mask. So we now no
Oh
longer need
no.
to fear the mask. Sherlock
Person in the
crows.
shoes. Oh no. Do you
No.
want to hear about parthenogenic stick insects?
Yes.
Okay,
Please.
great. So parthenogenesis. Real quick, catch y'all up if you haven't heard us talk about it in a while. There's only women in a species. The famous example is whiptail lizards. They're only female lizards. They reproduce via parthenogenesis, which is, depending on the animal and the type of genetic sequencing they have related to the sex of their offspring, it's different, but ultimately it's some sort of genetic clone of the mother. It's not an exact clone of the mother. It's a doubling of a haplotype of the mother, which, like, now we're getting deep into high school biology for those of you that remember it. But long story short, parthenogenesis is when there are only females and they have found a way to create a zygote in their body, mature it, and have babies only using their own set of genes. So there are animals out there that have done this for tens or hundreds of thousands of years, maybe longer. And so there's so many questions. How does a species evolve out of the use of a male? How do they maintain genetic diversity? Do they maintain genetic diversity, or is this an evolutionary dead end that we just haven't seen come to pass yet? There's lots and lots of questions. So one of the examples of parthenogenesis is a stick insect. And what's really interesting about this particular case, and why it was a ripe example for studying the genetic background of parthenogenesis, is that it's part of this genus Bacillus. And so Bacillus grandii maritimi populations are males and females that reproduce sexually. Bacillus atticus is only females that reproduce by parthenogenesis. And a third species, Bacillus roseus, includes both sexual and parthenogenic populations. So they have all three variables here covered. All one, all the other, and a mix. So they can look at the genes involved in male reproduction in these three different species who are close.
This is like the dream model system for reproduction in a scientist world. I'm like, oh my goodness. It's like looking at the different cowbird species to see about which ones are doing different parasite strategies. And okay, yes. This is the jackpot for sure.
Yes. So the researchers who looked at this, who I lost where they were from, University of Bologna. What do you actually say? It's got to be Bologna, right?
Oh, no.
Is that how you would say it? I don't actually. Yeah. It just occurred to me right now. I don't know how you say that. Feels really
oh, Americans are terrible.
Chat room, please save me. Oh, do you know, Kiki? How do you say it?
I think it's closer to Bologna. Yeah. Bologna.
Anyway, okay. Sorry if you're from Bologna. Anyway, was a research fellow looking at the presence and absence of traits on a species tree where things are lost through lineages. And then there's situations where sometimes genes are reinstated. So basically this researcher, Giobbe Forni, wanted to look at the specific genes related to male reproduction and why they might be maintained in a parthenogenic species. So that's really the question here, is like, if you've lost all need for males in this stick insect population, why would your genetic code still have anything related to male reproduction? Why would it be there? Because if it's junk genes, they go away. Great question.
Right? Maybe?
And so that's kind of what this researcher wanted to look at, is since you have these three different populations, it's the perfect opportunity to look at these male reproduction related genes in the three different groups and see kind of what's going on. So male-related genes had no signs of weakened selection or accelerated evolution compared to female-related genes in the parthenogenic species. There was no evidence that these genes were going anywhere. And the male-related patterns of gene expression were preserved across both parthenogenic species. So there has to be a reason they're keeping these genes. So they looked further. They found that the genes in female-related networks were expressed. These male reproductive genes were also primarily expressed in female reproductive tissues. So they're used for both. So this is called pleiotropy. So that's when there's multiple biological processes related to one gene. And so that's their main guess as to why this maintains. But the other guess is kind of what you were talking about. It's that there's an opportunity for there to occasionally be a male born in these animals.
Every once in a while. Maybe that's good.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So that can help, especially when, remember I was talking about how do you maintain genetic diversity?
Yeah.
If you're only reproducing via parthenogenesis. You really can't unless you every once in a while have a male. So if that happens, then there's a couple instances of sexual reproduction that happen, and then you kind of stir the pot a little bit, and then there's just females for many, many generations for a while again, right? So that could be another reason that it might maintain, but that's much easier to do, not have kind of runaway evolution and lose that capability if it is linked to another biological process. So this is a really cool study kind of just looking at this pleiotropy specifically related to male and female reproduction in these stick insects, but it is it's a good foundational study that can be used to look at future kind of exploration into this pleiotropy field. Why are genes not lost when traits are? Is it usually this one thing, or is there other reasons? So it just it's pretty interesting that they had these three different species that were so closely related that had such different kind of reproductive trajectories, but that they were able to look so closely at the genetics and see that genetically speaking, their coding for reproduction was basically the same across these different species.
Yeah. So what I start thinking about is like the layer of epigenetics and how we have genes that get wrapped, or the genes in our DNA that get wrapped up in these histone protein complexes, and there have to be processes that open up the histones so that the genes that are being hidden while they're wrapped up can be turned into proteins. There are also glycosylations, sugar proteins that are added to areas of DNA that get in the way of transcription, or sometimes help to signal, hey, come here, do more. And there is I think there's a very interesting balance between the little bits of RNA that go around and go, oh, hey, you get to be doing something now. And because they've been turned on, these little RNA bits are like, I'm not a protein, but I got to tell, like, I got messages, I got to tell you things. And they run around the cell like, oh, I can tell you a thing. You go on stage now. And the RNA is like, yeah, okay. And then these genes that have been hidden, suddenly you have a male. Whoops. What? Okay, that's great. But maybe it's environmentally induced. Maybe it is just random. But perhaps there is something to be said for what we call this, junk DNA, DNA dark matter, where these genes that are not transcribed, not turned into proteins, that don't seem to do anything, but they're still there. What is their importance? And maybe it is related to stuff like this.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked for so long about kind of junk DNA or what do they call it? Like our artifact DNA and stuff like that. That's in our and other animals' genetic code. But as we're learning more and more, a lot of that still has purpose. It's not just there. It's doing something.
Yep. How many viruses or bacterial genomes did our ancestors combine with? Just partially, just kind of, sort of, as our genome got bigger and bigger and bigger, and things worked and some things didn't. But let's just I like this book, but I'm not going to read it. I'm just going to leave it on the shelf for a while. Yeah. And then maybe
It'll be there
someday,
when I need it.
yeah, then maybe exactly somebody comes back around and goes, "Oh, that's an interesting book. This might be great right now. Oh my gosh."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, but I love this, like I said earlier, just this kind of a system where you can compare related species with different adaptations and different life strategies. I mean, you have to also look at, what are the environments of the species? What are the reasons potentially evolutionarily that might have contributed to their reproductive process? I'm not going to say choice. Um, but the sometimes parthenogenic, sometimes regular sexual reproduction. I mean, that one's a real interesting one. That one is probably like how much
Yeah.
stress is in the environment, what kind of resources are available, or how
Mhm.
many
Yeah,
of
are there
certain
any eligible
individuals.
males around? No? I'll just do it
Yes,
myself.
I'll do it myself. Yeah. Oh, I didn't know stick insects had parthenogenesis, and now I'm just so happy. I like
Yeah.
insects are so cool. They look like sticks.
Mhm. I mean, we didn't even talk about the fact that one of the weird genes that they have retained is for wings, which they don't have anymore, but they still have genes for that. So anyway, forgot to talk about that. That's where this
Oh.
all the idea for this study came from. Anyway,
So
there's a
then
little
what
learning nugget for you.
what else could those genes be used for? Might not be genes, maybe it'll be teeth. I mean, not wings, but teeth. Who knows?
Teeth on stick insects? No, thank you.
I don't know. Lungs? I don't know. Who knows where they'll be?
Oh boy.
I just wanted to add this one story onto the end of the animal corner because I think it is just fantastic. I'm sad Justin is not here tonight because I had planned this story thinking that he would be here as well. But there's a word in Dutch, keukenneuvelen. Keukenneuvelen. Keukenneuvelen.
Okay, good.
Keukenneuvelen means cow cuddling or cow hugging.
Oh,
And yeah,
cute.
in the Netherlands, apparently there's quite the tradition for people who live in the cities to take time off and go to the countryside and spend time with nature and farm animals. And so there's actually like people go and like they like to hang out with cows and I don't know, those weird goat creatures. And that helps them
Goat creatures.
helps them with their mental health, emotionally being out there, not just being out in nature, but interacting with the animals. And so this particular study that was just published in Human and Animal Interactions, cow cuddling, cognitive considerations in bovine assisted therapy. Some news in the last few months was that they had llamas, like therapy llamas, in the Portland International Airport, near where I'm located.
Sure. Sure.
So llamas who like spit and stuff can apparently be therapeutic, but we've never tried this with cud chewing cows. Except, so these researchers said, "Hey, let's look at it this way." And there's a whole scale that has been used before called the Human Animal Interaction Scale that they asked people how hugging cows and being with cows made them feel. Was it good? Was it bad? And then they asked the cows. No, I'm sorry, they did not ask the cows. Um, they did, however, um, ask the people how they thought the animals were interacting with them. Like what kinds of things were happening while they were interacting with the cows. So um, this stuff is so awesome. Like seriously, the things that they were talking about with the cows, not just cow cuddling, just spending time with them, petting them, talking to the cows, hugging them, playing with them, kissing the cows, grooming the cows, offering them food. maybe trying to train them or make them do tricks, hold them, take pictures with them, or just as a human go, I'm not going to be at the cow, or other people, are you going to be, were you aggressive to the cows? And so people
Aggressive
reported,
to the cow.
yeah, they had to put the whole spread of possible interactions in there. And so turns out that it really, really helped people. They reported spending most of their time near the animals, not necessarily interacting it with them in all of these different ways. About half of them did take pictures with the animals. 80 or 81.8% did pet the animals. And when you get into the hugging the animals, the cows, 27.3% were into that. And then on the how did the cows act toward you, the majority of the cows actually were pretty friendly and initiated
These weren't like
friendly
therapy cows.
interaction.
These were just normal cows
Cows,
in a field.
they're just cows at a farm.
Okay.
They haven't been trained to be therapy cows or anything like that. I mean, the cows also made friendly sounds, and they definitely liked taking your food if you wanted to do. They did not. The whole obey tricks or training, that was not a cow favorite. But about half the time, the cows liked to lick you, and 63% of the time, sniff or smell you. And half the time, 54.5%, they did decline interaction. So, okay, what does this suggest? This suggests that there is a cow part of the interaction and there is a human part to the interaction. That this is not just people going to the field and going, "Oh, cows, you must love me," and that's not what happened. So, a lot of the interactions, which I think were very positive, and people did report feeling good as a response. And the one thing that I thought was very interesting were the sex differences. So we had sex differences in the humans and how they responded to the cow cuddling. Kuchenüffeln, kuchenüffeln. And how the sex differences in cows led them to, work with the people. And basically, females of both species were more likely to initiate interactions and be social and it seem like they were enjoying it in one way or another. But that doesn't say that the males of both species were not. It just there was a very slight difference, and there were, really there was a lot of overlap in some of these questions as to the kind of interactions. But male cows were more likely to just be like, "No, I'm not interested," and yeah, male people were also more likely to not do that. But no male people did behave aggressively. No female. Nobody in this. I mean, it was a small 21 person survey. Nobody was aggressive to the
Also,
cows.
they're being watched.
Why? You just made me sad, Blair.
I mean, cow tipping exists for a reason.
Because
People, when left to their own devices, will sometimes do nasty things. But
I know. I
if
grew
you
up in the
volunteer for
country.
a study to cuddle
Mhm.
with cows, you're probably going to be nice to the cows.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, bottom line to this is if you're nice to cows, cows are probably going to be nice right back to you. They're not going to necessarily be aggressive. And if there is an opportunity for you to take some time off of work and go hang out with farm animals, cows, whatever, do goat yoga, I don't know, it might be good for your mental health, help you reset emotionally.
Just, I will add my own disclaimer to this, though, and say that if you are a hiker and you hike in places where there are cows, it is very dangerous during calving season to go near a cow with a calf if you have a dog.
Oh, gosh.
Don't do that. People
that's
die.
bad. That's bad in any animal situation.
Yes.
No.
But
No. Leave them
yeah,
alone.
it's when we talk about like the more people die from this, more people die from that than sharks, right? That whole soapbox that I have. Cows are pretty high. It's a
Yeah.
couple hundred people a year die from cow attacks because they get in between the cow and the calf with a dog. So like
Mhm.
don't approach a cow you don't know without the cow's owner nearby to tell you what is safe and is not safe. And also, if you have a dog with you, don't approach a cow, period.
Yeah.
Just throw it out there.
No, cows know dogs as like herding animals that bark at
Mhm.
them and nip at their heels and make they're yes. Anyway, yes. I mean,
Yes.
generally, do not approach an animal that you do not know. That's a good idea. And if you're going to go to a farm to seek out animal friendship, I don't just go say hi to the cows. Make sure that there's okay. Maybe this should be like a. You should go to the farm with a minder, or maybe it should be a very an observed situation, as you said, or a managed,
Even better,
facilitated
um,
situation.
volunteer at an animal shelter. You'll get a lot of the same benefits
Yeah,
and you'll be doing good. So
you're
do
doing
that.
good. That's
So in the kitten
right.
room at an animal shelter, play with kittens. You'll get
Yeah,
some good stuff out of that.
yeah. So people who were asked, they were like, "Oh yeah, it wasn't a big deal that this bull was shy, but when he finally started to approach me, it felt so good, like I was special." And participants were concerned about being stepped on or pushed by the steers because steers, but it didn't happen. Anyway, so a lot of people fell in love with cows thanks to
Cute.
this study. Okay, but now let's move on from cows, the new cuddling animal of choice, and move on to T Rex. And why the heck are people always bashing on T Rex? It's like, well, first T Rex is like, "Rah, fierce, blah, blah, blah," and then it's like, no, he couldn't run, and they T Rex couldn't run, and T Rex was a scavenger, not a hunter. So that's whatever, like always taking T Rex down a peg in the eyes of the people who want to see T Rex as, I don't know, different. I don't know, as something, I don't know. They don't really want to know. They want this like monster anyway. So maybe let's keep bashing on T Rex and so that T Rex isn't a monster. But this particular study is a reply or a response to a previous study in which researchers used the casts of the inside of skulls to make an analysis, an estimate of the number of neurons that are in the T Rex brain. And then they were like, ooh, there's so many neurons. T Rexes were so intelligent. And this is really indicative of, dinosaurs and their brains and their smarts and all the stuff. So um, the researchers, they compared a bunch of different species and brain sizes, and they did some new analyses, and they pretty much have come out and said, hey, people who did previous study, we think your estimates are pretty wrong. And you can't tell the intelligence of an animal or a species based on the number of neurons. Bigger animals have more neurons. So what are you talking about? We don't even know what IQ is anyway. So, um,
Right.
right. But in this previous study last year, it was estimated that the Tyrannosaur was at least as intelligent as a baboon. And so this study says, I don't think so. I mean, when we do this stuff, it's really like endocasts and fossilized stuff it's just really inaccurate, and it's just not going to get you where you want to be. And so, sorry, T-Rex is not as smart as you think they are, and they're probably kind of dumb.
Hold on though. Aren't scavengers usually pretty smart?
Yes, they are. Um,
So
yeah, so not necessarily dumb, just not as smart as uh the primates that we and again, what is
of
smart?
course.
What is IQ? What is this that we're trying to compare?
Yeah.
A big giant scavenger who survived for how like so long, and primates have been here not that long yet. Not even that young.
That's such a good point. Like, what do you call smart? Like, do you think a snake is dumb? Because I don't think a snake is dumb. You know, they
What's
just
intelligent?
they
Mhm.
yeah, like they're very good at what they do.
Mhm.
Oh, silly.
Yeah. So, yeah. Anyway, this is going to be awesome because I'm sure this is like the fire shot it off the bow. Scientists battling scientists about their methods and their estimates and trying to figure out how various species lived millions, billions of years ago. We didn't know them then. How can we know them now? We want to tell
No, and we
stories.
can't do behavioral studies on them
Mm-mm.
because they're gone. So
Yeah.
we
All we
don't
could
know.
do
We don't
is
know.
look at birds.
Yeah, which are pretty
Yeah,
smart. Birds are
which
pretty smart.
Yep,
So
depends on the species though, and the reason, and what is the smart? What is the smart you want?
right.
It all depends. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. T-Rex, I'm on your side. I think people are just they're misunderstanding you, T-Rex. I think so. And then my final story, Blair.
Yeah.
When your child turns is around the 3 to 6 year old age,
Uh-huh.
just know that they're more likely to trust a robot than a human.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
just so
That
you
doesn't seem
know.
problematic at all. Mhm.
Nope.
Yep, yep, yep.
Yeah. So this new study that is out in Computers and Human Behavior, researchers performed a study in which they had kids, 111 children. It's very even, 111 children, aged 3 to 6 years, in an online study. They had them watch videos of a human and a robot that were labeling different objects. Some of the objects were familiar and some of them were new. And they found that the kids, they asked the kids, like, okay, which object are you trusting the labeling of? Which individual, the robot or the human, was more likely to be labeling it correctly? And the novel or new objects were the most important questions. And the kids were biased to the robots. They really, really trusted the robots more. And the evaluations they did in the abstract here says their social evaluations also tended much more strongly towards a general robot preference.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
let me give you the
Yeah.
but.
Yes,
We don't
please.
have to we don't have to be too concerned, because it appears that around the age of 3 and around, kids are understanding and learning agency, and that different individuals as humans have agency, which means they
Mhm.
can do what they want, they can make mistakes, they can do whatever. And so, in this situation that might be a learning situation, the kids were more likely to trust the robots because the robots don't have agency. And the kids, perhaps, this is what the researchers are concluding, is that kids understand that idea of agency, allow it to be humans that have agency. But that means when it comes to a question of, like, who do you think did the best job at the labeling and which one do you trust to have put the right label on this thingy? Kids are like, the robot. Because people make mistakes and I don't trust
Mhm.
people.
Mhm. See, unfortunately, you've caught me on a really bad week for this because
Oh, yes.
Google launched their AI situation this week, right? Where
Oh,
they
not
give the
happy.
AI answer up top, and I'm sure everyone's very aware of that, but I now have a severe distrust of robots or computers or whatever you want to call it, where now
Mhm.
I feel like I have to triple check literally everything that my phone or computer tells me. And I
I need
hope
to
this is
find
a
a new,
blip. Like,
maybe, I don't know. I don't know. I think I'm in a, like, get a computer that's like not identified with me at all, get a like VPN and the Tor browser. I'm going dark web, everybody. I mean, I need a search engine that actually works, and I don't think
That
any of
searches? Yes.
that searches and
Like
find that has been, I don't know, cataloging and has its black box that can actually
that actually
give
searches
you
and like gives you top results based on actual views instead of who pays them the most, and then also doesn't make up answers to things based on onion articles and tell people to
Mhm.
eat one rock a day. Anyway, yeah, so I think this is
Yeah.
we're in it for an interesting year, 5 years, 10 years. I really don't know. I mean, if you talk to AI experts, some of them think that this is all going to implode within a couple of years and we're going to have to start over with AI, that it's like fundamentally broken. So if that's the case, this is all going to fix itself. But if we continue with this kind of shoddy AI model,
Yeah.
it's going to be a tough road to hoe teaching our children when to trust technology and when not to, and for us to
Uh,
figure it out too. Also, when us to how we can teach our parents when to trust technology and when not to. Is that
or
too?
so many. It's everything. I mean, honestly, this is the kind of thing, not just media and, newspapers and magazines and the places, television stations where we used to get our news, but also, there's a real problem with how people get information and the algorithms and the large language learning models that are starting to put information together and talk to us about this stuff. There does need to be regulation and also probably not commercial funding. So it needs to be like libraries. It needs to be like uh, I don't know, phones and the phone lines, the post office. I know here in the United States, some people want to get rid of the post office, not pay for it and make it, a business venture. No. There are
Please,
things.
no.
We need the commons, and the commons, they're worth it, and our information is worth it. So this is a nonprofit venture, at least. And I know, I mean, the Biden administration has, with the CHIPS Act, has also set money aside to invest in governmental aspects of understanding the algorithms and the research. So it's not only in the hands of corporations, but at the same time, is that any better or good? We have to, there needs to be, we got to figure out how to do things in a way that we learn how to trust and learn who we can trust, how we can trust, and when we can trust, but never trust fully. Yeah. There's a whole bunch of stuff out there. Our kids are going to have so much fun.
Yeah, it's a new landscape for sure.
It's a new landscape. You ready to head out? I think have we done it?
Yes, and I can hear someone's awake in the other room, so I
Oh
definitely
no,
have to go
time
pretty
to
soon.
go. All right. All right, little one. It is time to let your mother go. So, everyone out there, I really do hope that you enjoyed this show tonight. Blair, thank you so much for being here tonight. And everyone, I thank you for listening. Shout outs to Fada for your help with show notes and social media and all that fun stuff. Also, Identity4 for recording the show, whether or not we're too loud. I hope that we didn't clip. Rachel for editing the show. Everyone in the chat rooms, thank you for being in the chat room and chatting. And there's some new people here. Hey, hi, nice to see you. It's great. And then we've got our people in the Discord who are fantastic. And they're in the Discord because they're patrons. Thank you for being there. Gord, Arnlor, others, thank you for keeping the chat room spaces happy and kind. And everyone, just really thank you for being kind, compassionate, and making this a space where we can all listen to each other's viewpoints and investigate what's going on. And of course, if you would like to help out, you can be like one of these people I'm going to read the names of now, our TWIS patrons. Thank you to Alan Viola, Aaron Anathema, Arthur Kepler, Craig Potts, Mary Gertz, Teresa Smith, Richard Badge, Bob Coles, Kent Northcote, George Corris, Pierre Velazarb, John Ratnaswamy, Chris Wozniak, Vegard Chefstad, Donathan Stiles, a.k.a. Don Stylo, Ali Coffin, Reagan, Shoebrewster, Sarah Forfar, Don Mundus, P.I.G., Stephen Alberon, Daryl Myshak, Andrew Swanson, Fredis 104, Sky Luke, Paul Ronovich, Kevin Ridden, Noodles Jack, Brian Carrington, David E. Youngblood, Sean Clarence Lamb, John McKee, Greg Riley, Mark Hessenflow, Steve Leeseman, a.k.a. Zima, Ken Hayes, Howard Tan, Christopher Rabin, Richard Brendan Minish, Johnny Gridley. I'll see you soon. Jaime Day, G. Burton Lattimore, Flying Out, Christopher Dreyer, Artyom, Greg Briggs, John Atwood, Rudy Garcia, Dave Wilkinson, Rodney Lewis, Paul, Rick Ramus, Philip Shane, Kurt Larson, Craig Landon, Sue Doster, Jason Olds, Dave Neighbor, Eric Nat, Lon Makes, E.O., Adam Mishkan, Aaron Luthen, Bob Calder, Marjorie, Paul D. Disney, David Simmerly, Patrick Pecoraro, and my favorite artist, Tony Steele. Thank you all, one and all, for supporting us on Patreon. And if anyone out there would like to also support us on Patreon and have their name read at the end and make me trip over the words that I say, the names that I read, you can go to TWIS.org and click on the Patreon link and become a patron as well. Help support TWIS. On next week's show, we'll be back
on Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific time, broadcasting live from Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook.
Oh, yeah. And if you want to listen to us as a podcast, we are. Just look for This Week in Science wherever podcasts are found. If you enjoyed the show, get your friends to subscribe as well. I have recently updated our podcast playlists on YouTube so that the podcast is not just the live broadcast, but also the edited podcast, because Google Podcasts went away. So yeah, so you can subscribe to our podcast very soon on YouTube. I'm taking care of these little pieces
That's
of work.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Nicely done. For more information on anything you've heard here today, show notes and links to our stories will be available on our website. That's www.twis.org. And you can also sign up for a newsletter there.
Oh, yeah. And someday we'll send you one. We love your feedback. If there's a topic that you would like us to cover or address, or a suggestion for an interview, let us know. And you can tell us on our social media accounts. I think Blair still does that. But really, you could send us an email, put TWIS in the subject line. And Blair, because you're here, you need to be the person to tell me why we do that.
Oh, because if you don't, your email will get strapped to a rocket that is fired away from us using blue light and special solar panels for energy. Just so far and so long that we will be dead before we could ever retrieve it.
Ooh, yeah, no. Okay, yeah, definitely not going to see it. Put TWIS in the subject line.
We look forward to discussing science with you again next week. And if you learned anything from the show, remember,
it's all in your head.
This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science, it's the end of the world. So I'm setting up shop, got my banner unfurled. It says the scientist is in, I'm gonna sell my advice. Show them how to stop the robots with a simple device. I'll reverse global warming with a wave of my hand. And all it'll cost you is a couple of grand. 'Cause this week's science is coming your way. So everybody listen to what I say. I use the scientific method for all that it's worth. And I'll broadcast my opinion all over the earth. 'Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in 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 Science.